If you work in care, education, or you're a parent, you've probably thought this: they're just being difficult. But what if I told you the behaviour isn't actually the problem? The logic we've been taught to use is. Today, I want to challenge the old story that says you do as you're told because I know best, and show you a new way of thinking about behaviour that actually leads to positive outcomes for everyone, including yourself. Hello and welcome back to the Able to Care podcast. It's a new year, it's a new season. I'm Andy Baker, trainer, author of Targeting the Positive, and someone who has spent years in rooms with care staff, teachers and carers who are exhausted by behaviours that challenge. This episode is for you if you support anyone whose behaviour can feel aggressive, withdrawn, oppositional, or just plain confusing. Whether that's in a care home, a classroom, a foster placement, or at home as a parent. We're going to look at the old logic most of us are raised with, punishment, reward, control, because I said so, and why it backfires, and then move into the new logic that's trauma-informed, person-centered, and actually protects everyone's well-being. I'll give you some simple questions and mind shifts you can start using straight away after this episode. One of the reasons I became a behaviour specialist is I was mugged at knifepoint when I was 16 years old. That was a life-changing moment for me for various reasons. One, because I'd already achieved quite a lot in martial arts, and therefore I got a lot of grief from people going, "Why didn't you disarm him and kill him?" Well, because I was terrified. But that moment changed my life, not in a trauma way, but in an exploratory way. I started to try and understand why he behaved the way he did and how he managed to disarm me and why I reacted the way I did. And that took me down a rabbit hole of, for the next however many years, introducing myself to psychology and the psychology of behavior. And now that's what I do for a living. So what do we really mean when we talk about behavior that challenges? So when we talk about behavior that challenges, and I'm very careful with my wording, challenging is subjective. We all have a different idea of what somebody or what something is challenging. Some people find reading and writing challenging. Other people find it easy. Some people find maths challenging. Other people find it easy. So it all depends on your values, the context, how resourced you are as a caregiver. We are all challenging. When we think about challenging behavior, and we need to think of this way, we can all be challenging to somebody some of the time. So when we're looking at behavior that's challenging, I want you to understand that sometimes you can be challenging. Sometimes you find your partner challenging. Sometimes you find your own kids challenging. Sometimes you find the lady at the post office who always seems grumpy challenging. That is the nature of behavior itself. As a human species, we find interacting with each other and putting ourselves into other people's framework, other people's ideas, understanding other people's reasons and behavior confusing and difficult at times. So when we say challenging behavior, what we're really meaning is this behavior is challenging me, or it's challenging the environment. Because sometimes it is about an impact on the individual themselves or the harm they're causing to themselves or others in the setting. But it doesn't automatically mean that the person is dangerous, bad, or broken. It just means our current skills, mindset, or environment can't hold what's happening right now. Now, if we think about how subjective behavior that challenging is, sometimes you'll find, let's say that if I was to spend this episode making a strange noise, some people wouldn't even necessarily notice, whereas other people would find it irritating and switch off immediately. You only need to look at, if you compared my algorithm on social media to somebody else's algorithm, we'd have completely different algorithms. We'd find different people annoying. We'd find different things interesting. So it's such a subjectivity to behavior that we find challenging. But I do understand that sometimes it can feel, there may be the specific types like aggression or destructive behavior that maybe feel a little bit more black and white. But we do need to recognize that just because we're finding something challenging doesn't mean that it's our right to be able to change it. And we have to kind of understand that sometimes it comes from a place of us needing to feel in control and feeling empowered, rather than actually it's something that we need to change. So when we're looking at the old logic principles, we have to understand as human beings, we do like to be in control. So We label as well as a way of oversimplifying situations. We're just trying to navigate this world in the best way we can. It doesn't make us bad people that we do this all the time. But we may label somebody as being lazy or being naughty or difficult or defiant or whatever it is. Maybe even perceive it as controlling. And sometimes then we feel that they should obey. We must punish them. And these are all coming from old logic scripts. They're all coming from just, that's the way we think. And thinking doesn't mean truth. So old logic sounds like they're doing it because they're naughty. I have to be in control. They should do what they're told. There must be consequences. Now, some of you will have watched podcasts with me before and know I've spoken about the should and should not and must not scripts in the past. But it's so important to keep revisiting it and keep reflecting on it, because if we don't catch it, then it becomes, again, ingrained in our habit and we may not even notice we're doing it. The problem is when you're supporting somebody whether with dementia or trauma, learning disabilities, autism, mental health issues, or just a stressed teenager, those assumptions we make about should and shouldn't and must nots are often completely wrong. Think about it this way. Sometimes we fall into this trap of focusing on the behavior rather than the person. We focus on a task-focused process. Let's say we're looking to go out for the day, for instance, with a young child, and I'm sure most people can relate to this to some degree or another, and we're trying to get them dressed, but for whatever reason, they're not complying. They're not going along with it. Our focus becomes the task of just getting them out the door, and we forget to be curious about, I wonder why they're finding this difficult. I wonder why they're procrastinating it. Why are they being so easily distracted in this moment? If it was something they wanted to do, they'd potentially be much more engaged, or maybe they're overly excited and they're struggling to focus on the tasks that I'm giving them in the way that I'm giving them. We immediately make it that it's their fault, that it's their problem, but maybe it's because we're expressing ourselves in a chaotic way. We're focusing on dominance and control, which is making them feel anxious. And we all know when we're anxious, it's much harder for us to regulate and manage our own behavior. So quite often when we're looking to go, if we fall into the task-orientated trap, and this is something that whether you work in care or whether you're a parent, it doesn't matter. We can all fall into the trap of being task-focused rather than person-centered. We don't like it when it happens to us, but we still do it to other people all the time. So what do we need to move to is learning to respond rather than react. Sometimes when we're encountering this resistance to whatever it is, or this behavior we see as distressing or frustrating or maybe even dangerous, our instinct is to react to that behavior in the moment because the pause feels too long. But the first thing I've got to be able to do for me to be able to control anybody else, I must be able to control myself first. If I can't control myself first, then how do I have a right to control others? So responding is so important. It's that brief pause before we take action. And this could be in any different setting. So one of the key messages I try and get over in my courses and Targeting the Positive with Behaviour Challenge in the book, as well as, of course, the Able Target System, is we want to kind of work and develop the habit. And it is a habit. This isn't just something you just do. It is a habit you have to work on and practice. It's like building a muscle at the gym. You don't just do it. You have to actually work at it and build it up and get better over time. But these habits involve the habit of curiosity, empathy, person at the center of what we're doing. We're looking for strengths. We're looking to promote growth, and not just in them, but also in ourselves. And it's about changing our mindset in this particular moment. So when we're looking at shifting over from what we just class as old logic, which is should and shouldn't, do as they're told, punishment reward principles, instead we're instigating this high level of curiosity and empathy. Now, please don't misunderstand though. That doesn't mean not boundaried. I know many of you watched other episodes. I've done lots of different sessions talking about boundaries and the importance of boundaries. But new logic asks very different questions. Rather than looking at control, it's what's the aim and function of this behavior? What are they feeling right now? What's wrong for them? Or what might have happened in the past that could be presenting in the present? So what we're looking for is, what's this behavior doing for them? What are the potential benefits? Every behavior that we encounter that we find challenging, it must have a benefit to the individual that's engaging in it. Okay, it must be the only thing. Nobody acts in a way that at the time they think is a bad idea. This is a really important message. I'm going to say it again because it's so important. Nobody acts in a way that at the time they think is a bad idea. Okay? And when we understand that, it changes all sorts of interactions around us. They're doing it because it feels right or the right way of reacting in that particular moment. Even if we can see it from the outside, it's completely wrong. Even if part of them feels ambivalent to it, going, I don't know whether this is right or not. There's part of them that goes, this is the right thing to do. The other thing we need to think about, not just for the benefits for them, is what's the cost of changing it to them, to us, and to the relationship? It's an important bit here when we're looking at the behavior management, and in the 6-stage target model, the first step is always identify, and it's picking the right battles. Is this because I don't like it? Is it because I feel a sense of lacking control? Is it because I feel they should or shouldn't? Is it because I'm scared about that if they engage in this way, will people like them in the future? Will it allow us, how will it impact us or impact them? So we need to be very mindful of the difference between what we class as maladaptive and then disliked behavior. So I'm just going to briefly explain what maladaptive is. So we have adaptive or maladaptive, and adaptive behavior is behavior we use to either meet a need or to cope with stress that is beneficial for our well-being. Whereas maladaptive is behavior that we use to cope with stress or to meet our needs that is potentially detrimental for our well-being. There is a big difference between maladaptive, it could be detrimental to my well-being, and just something that is disliked, something that other people don't agree with. And we have to be very, very mindful based on our values, beliefs, and attitudes that we're not impacting our values, beliefs, and attitudes on somebody else. So we've got to weigh up the idea of cost versus benefit when we're exploring any behavior. So this is first step. When we're looking at understanding behavior, we do have to understand the framework that we're working from and our value structure to it. If we take, for example, I guarantee pretty much most people watching this will have a minimum of a bath or a shower every day, because that is the cultural norm if you're watching this in the UK. But not everybody watching this will feel that's appropriate. Some people just go, a strip wash is fine. Some people go, and what does it matter if I skip a day? There is no universal truth that says this is what good hygiene is. And there is no universal truth that says you are only a good person, or if you only have value if you engage in this particular way of behaving. And yet how many people are in care settings, or whether it be children or not, that sometimes that is imposed or enforced. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should just, not encourage positive hygiene. But again, we need to look at if somebody isn't doing that, where's that coming from? Why? How important is it? Is it something that's causing distress? Is there other ways of meeting this need without having to force them to do what we think is necessarily right? So I'm going to give you 3 practical mindset shifts that you can use tomorrow. First off, shifting that sense of what's wrong with you to what's wrong for you. What are you feeling right now, or what might have happened in the past that could be presented in the present? That simple shift from that one question to what's wrong with you to what's happened to you, or what's happening and what you're trying to achieve, can change everything. It develops a curiosity. Step 2, moving from stop it to how can I help this person to meet their needs in a more appropriate way? So this is a prime example of something like attention seeking, for instance. If a person's acting in a way that we think is wrong to get attention, well, how do we want them to behave to get the attention they're after? Rather than just trying to stop it, let's teach them the right way of doing it rather than punishing what we perceive as wrong. So step 2 was moving from stop it to what skills they need to learn to be able to meet their need in a more appropriate way. And the third one is moving from let's fix the person to let's support and help them. Let's adjust the environment first. Let's teach them the right skills to meet their needs in a way that is beneficial for their well-being. Shifting those 3 mindset elements can be huge, not just as far as improving outcomes, but actually improving relationships. So if you're watching this and you're interested in finding out more, please follow, like, or share, or reach out to us to find out more about what we do when we're teaching around behavior. is such an important element of interaction to improve the quality of your life as well as improve the quality of lives of those you're supporting. Thank you. Have you ever encountered an adult or child's behaviour that has felt difficult, overwhelming, or challenging? Have you sometimes felt at a loss of what to do, or know that you didn't handle it quite right? People are complex and unpredictable, and their behaviour can be like the weather. We've all made the mistake of looking out the window and feeling safe to wear shorts, but 5 minutes later wishing for an umbrella. What if, like a weatherman, you understood how humidity, temperature and pressure all come together to cause the weather, allowing you to better prepare, predict and respond and prevent ever having a picnic ruined by a thunderstorm ever again? My book, called Targeting the Positive with Behaviours that Challenge, helps you to become the weatherman of behaviour. It provides you with a toolkit to increase competency, confidence, resilience and empathy, so you feel more assured about how to respond to distressed or dysregulated behaviours in others, including those affected by trauma, mental health, neurodiversity, learning disabilities or dementia. Build better connections, achieve de-escalation and improve outcomes for yourself and those you engage with my celebrated 6-stage target model, a step-by-step process to reduce distress for everyone. Discover my empowering, person-centered guide in Targeting the Positive, written by me, Andy Baker, available from online bookstores worldwide. Find a link in the description and order today.